This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 100 of Breaking Banks Europe. I'm Mateo, the executive producer of the show, and I'm here with nobody else than everyone who is making this show for the past almost 2 years. So you know all these faces because we actually do webcasts as well. We are super excited. We started this adventure sort of hoping that it will kind of work, and 100 shows, a little bit more actually. Later, here we are. So why don't we start by hearing from the different hosts, what's happening, what's in their plate, how do they feel, and sort of welcome all the auditors. Why don't we start with Megan? Megan, hey, move to Portugal. I know that news.
Yes, I am now almost a Portuguese resident, although I am a Portuguese homeowner. So yeah, I've been lucky enough to be spending my time this year between Germany and Portugal. And yeah, this year for me has been a lot of podcast hosting, which has been awesome. And I think, yeah, I was lucky enough to record some Breaking Bank episodes around ecosystems in the Baltics, which is, I was really excited to share all the, success stories and insights and what makes these markets so successful. I always root for the underdog. And I think, these little tiny countries up on the Baltic Sea are doing incredible things. So that was definitely the highlight for me. Apart from that, still freelance consulting, doing a lot of work at the moment into embedded finance opportunities. So that's, really exciting for me. And really excited to be here for the 100th episode. I remember when Mateo asked me if I wanted to be a host, I was actually in Portugal. So now it's all come full circle.
We are circling back.
Yeah. So thank you, Mateo. And can I hand it over to Nina?
Hello from London. What's going on in my life? Everything is moving at the speed of light. Goodness, it's been a big year, hasn't it? I left my job at Klarna 5 months ago to start my own business. So I am now the CEO and co-founder of Bloom Money, which is a fintech app that allows people from migrant communities to borrow and save money. And so it's been quite the journey to go from an operating life into a founder life. Everything is on fire all the time, but I'm also learning so much, every day. I actually just yesterday, I was thinking I used to sit in meetings in my previous job where it was like, oh, wow, okay, big day. We've decided to consider adding in a new feature. Maybe let's go to the next meeting. And now my days are in one day. I've applied for a government grant, done 3 pitches, written a whole new blog post, everything gets just moving 50 times faster, it seems. So that's been wonderful. It's been great to use the podcast to travel, as I have yet to travel outside the UK since coronavirus. So I got to host the episode where we went over to Sweden and got to speak to the team at Anyfin, who have actually just raised again, I think. And actually I've been invited to Stockholm FinTech Week off the back of that. So something for me to look forward to next year. But I'm super excited to be part of this community, all of our listeners who have been tuning in every episode. And I'm learning so much. We've got some fun things in store coming up, looking at debt collection soon. So very, very excited for the next 100 episodes. So I'm going to hand over to Paolo. What have you been up to, Paolo?
So thanks for being here all together. I'm so happy. I remember when in 2013, I was in the IBM head office in New York, and they asked me for thought leadership. And they said, you can write some blogs. And I said, what is a blog? I really didn't know. Then I remember a few years after, Brett King invited me to speak at Breaking Banks podcast. And I said, what is a podcast? And then when 2 years ago, we had this conversation with Brett and Mateo to launch Breaking Banks Europe, I thought that it's good to be on the other side now, to be part of a team that can invite other people to speak and to present their point of views and their experience. And 2 years into Breaking Banks Europe, 100 episodes after, I still believe I am a baby podcaster. There's so much that I have to learn, and I've been learning so far, so it feels very good. The last 2 years, like everybody, was basically home after many years of intensive travel. So Breaking Banks was a way of connecting with people, feeling like a part of multiple conversation. And it was a moment that I could open during the day in order to reflect and think and learn from everyone else. And so that gave me a lot of ideas. So that became a new book also. That is about to be launched in a couple of weeks. So that kept me very busy and very silent during these months. But most of all, I'm glad for all of the conversations that I had, and I listened to what you guys were hosting other episodes, because that really made sense on a global stage in a couple of years where everything seemed to be falling apart, but we managed to keep on going and we went very well.
You make me cry, Paolo.
That's my role. Emotional cell.
Okay, you pick who you
German to Germany. I go to Matthias.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, well, at least 50% German now, as we discussed.
Now.
Yeah, well, the last year, actually, I could not, thinking, the debrief for that session and thinking back, actually, I realized, wow, it's October already. Where has the year gone? It's as Nina said, it's light speed all over the place. Those home office COVID days make you lose your orientation grid totally. So, I had to really take some notes, but I'm going to reduce it. So on the one side, of course, I stay, and Ajit, because you asked me, I did stay, of course, with one foot, or let me say with one eye in the crypto environment. I've been a business angel investor in one company which successfully executed a transaction this year, which was massive and way, way earlier than I ever thought about. Been contacted by several, not overdoing it, by some external partners who kind of trying to get their hands around in Europe for crypto-centric financial services institutions. So that is very exciting, because that keeps me going in this space and have a look to this. But on the one side, but my full focus is something totally different. It's a company we founded actually back in 2020, and it's called Trade Light Solutions. And that company is operating at the intersection of video games and the world of finance. So what would that mean? Actually, we allow video game developers to create video games with financial data as a central content to those video games, which means you can create fun-making, impactful, teaching, maybe educating, maybe definitely enjoying video games that make people that maybe never thought about it, but get them in touch with financial topics in whatever way and sense. And that is absolutely exciting, because, being a regulated C-suite member of banks over the last, 25 years, now suddenly operating in a world which is limitless creative, and is just joy focused, and really, let me say, your creativity is limiting the approach, which is, this is something I never would have said in banking. It's actually totally exciting. And so the fun note on this is, and then I hand over, the fun note on this is, and actually get prepared because I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah. It's, a crypto guy in a fintech meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
They come at the end.
So the fun note on this is that I was maybe, or most certainly, one of the youngest C-level or CEO of a bank ever. I'm definitely one of the oldest gaming company co-founders now. So this is, that's what happened. So I'm going to hand over. Ajit, how are you?
Yeah. So I am having a huge amount of fun. So I've been at Aave building out the institutional product. So we are essentially bringing regulated financial institutions into DeFi. That's a lot of work. There is quite a bit of education work. So I've been spending a lot of time with policy institutions, OECD, the FATF, you name Bank of England, the FCA. So all of the regulators, the traditional investment banks. So, it helps to be kind of the oldest guy, one of the oldest people in DeFi. So everyone else, so I'm kind of 45 now, and so I can wear a suit and still look okay in it. So I've been spending a lot of time with traditional financial institutions, regulators, policy institutions, and so on and so forth. But then I have the other life, right? It's a bit like Spider-Man. So once the lights go off, then I'm hanging out in the DAOs, flipping NFTs.
Your T-shirt says it all, by the way.
Yeah. It's the rave. So organizing, raves, which is basically Rave. And yeah, so spending a lot of time in DAOs, investing very actively in Web3 startups. I think 30 odd by now. So I think having a huge amount of fun, meeting a lot of people, traveling to conferences, doing a bunch of webinars and Zoom and so on. So I think the last 2 years have been quite intense. In my world, sleep is rare, and it looks rare as the meme goes. So there are lots of memes, lots of DAOs. Every day there is something new coming around. There is a lot of regulatory activity as well in my world. So I think there's quite a bit of noise coming out of DC, China. I'm still spending too much time on Twitter, as you already know, and 80% of the time is on Twitter, Telegram, Discord, and the other 20% of the time is actually doing some work, right? But a lot of that work is essentially education and sort of explaining to the fintechs and the traditional financial institutions, and that's pretty much everyone, right? I mean, we work with some of the biggest payments companies. We work with some of the biggest banks on DeFi. We work with some of the largest, crypto native institutions, hedge funds, family offices. So it's been pretty intense, but an incredible amount of fun. I don't think I've had more fun at work ever in my career. Right? It's just unbelievable.
That's great. There are two things that I would like to add to this. One is that we are missing one host because we are perfectly balanced. There is Francesca with my business partner at FTS, but today she could not join for good reasons. But she's with us. Francesca, hi! Thanks for being a great add to the host of Breaking Banks Europe. That's one, and the second is. I want to announce something that we started is a new sort of is an extension of Breaking Banks that we wanted to call Breaking Payments, and actually we haven't shared the flyer of it, but it's an idea that sort of was incubated in. Money 2020 a couple of weeks ago, because I started having this talk with the Thought Machine, the PayU, the OpenPay, the Think, and the WireX, and the BBC, and all these like grown-up kids from the block. And I got like Asimo and all this. I've got this idea that payments are becoming cool again, which I'm not totally convinced about it because I always found them particularly boring. But all of a sudden, the way they talk about it and the way they embed it in, the way they treat it as a plumbing to enable business applications and new services with their clients, I thought that it was worth to put all these players together and launch a show that is going to be a little bit unconventional. Breaking Payments is the perfect title, actually, because it's like they are deconstructed and reconstructed into some other entity, or sometimes they are even hidden, and used it as in what I call this meta industry that fintech has become. So we're launching Breaking Payments, and the flyer and the sort of concept was ready yesterday at 7 p.m. Today, the first email to the guys that we discussed with at Money 2020 went out. Let's see what their feedback is. Of course, a couple of them are positive because these are conversations that were made already. So it was a great Money 2020. We missed you all, guys. We couldn't catch up in person, but I'm planning the next one will be different.
How can you say payments are boring? You were just Swift for many.
Well, you wonder why I left, right?
There you go. So hopefully you can bring Swift on now with their innovation team and see how they've gone with Breaking Payments.
Absolutely.
Well, Mateo,
the challenge.
Please.
Yes, Paolo.
No, I was about to say, if you look at the market capitalizations of the top 500 banks from 2010 to 2020, you see that in 2010, if you add the value of the payment providers at the fintech banks, it covers 97% of the market capitalization, right? But in 2020, that went down to 75%, and just the payment providers account for 20%. So this accelerated through the pandemic and continues through 2021. So definitely the market is understanding the value and the power of payments. And what has been happening the last year is that they became less boring because they started building the super apps. So they realized that they are the horizontal infrastructure of every connection with the client. So that's where we start possibly seeing the rebuilding through fintech, the financial services industry. So it's a space that is going to be super hitting.
Actually, thank you, Paolo, because I'm going to steal that sentence and put right at the opening of whatever sort of email that I'm going to shoot to find our partners for this. So, in your opinion, guys, what else should be talked about when we think about our 2022 planning? I mean, from what our new kid entrepreneur from the block, Matthias, it is obvious that, embedded finance and even the gaming industry, gaming and fintech could actually become a subject on its own. Don't you think, Matthias?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Mateo. No, absolutely. And this is why we're going to go, speaking in game terms, going to go all in to this. And by the way, we have to make a clear demarcation or differentiation when we speak about games on the one side and gamification on the other side. Yeah. So because it's mixed up many times, just because it contains game in both words, so to say. But gamification is yes, you take game components and integrate those in an existing workflow, maybe what is a bank or a broker or whatever kind of existing workflow of a financial services institute or whatever kind of a company, anyhow, by the way. But you integrate those components from the game world and make it look like a game. That does not mean, and this is why I find gamification to be very, very critical. Let me say this is a German false friend translation. I'm skeptical regarding gamification. This is what I have to say, and find it even dangerous because gamification itself could camouflage a real material risk actually that is existing, but it's not changing the risk, right? So a gamified transaction of a broker in a size of 10,000 euros still is a 10,000 euro risk. It's not less. The difference to the games is that, first of all, video games and games are created to, first of all, be a safe harbor, so to say. So that risk is not existing. Second, it is created in order to deliver fun and joy. This is not what maybe all discount brokers could say. In particular, not the ones who are located in Sherwood Forest. Third, it is created maybe to improve, to give positive feedback, to have rules, to learn those rules. It's not that one of us would have the fear to be bankrupt after playing a round of Monopoly. Yes, we would be angry that we lost, or maybe disappointed, not angry, but disappointed that we lost. But maybe we learned the lesson that we did overinvest, that we whatever, And this is the difference to a game. So a game is positive, rewarding, feedback giving, enabling you to learn, and so on and so forth. This is the difference to gamification. Gamification doesn't give a shit about all these other components, It's just there to look nice. This is it. And that's the danger of it. So this is why we think very much about, I see you coming, Paolo. This is why we have a strong look to video games and how we can integrate actually financial data into video games. I think this is a massive development. Paolo.
Yes, I'm stepping in because, you know well that my 2017 book, FinTech Innovation, has the subtitle From Robo-Advisors to Goal-Based Investing and Gamification. And the intention there was to understand how you could use digital to help people better understand finance, not really to create nudges or sludges. Now, the Nobel Prize for Economics that was announced 2 days ago went to these three guys that are addressing the what-if analysis as a way to make economic decisions. So they call it credibility revolution, like the models that are close, you don't understand, that makes you decide on investing might not be good enough for you to learn what it is about playing with money. So the essence of a game is a what if, because you need to make decisions. You need to move to the right or to the left to get to the new screen. So now it is getting mainstream in theory as well. So I'm very pleased that you mentioned this and the difference between games and gamification, to focus really where you can use technology as a tool to help people relate to a problem and find their ways to understand, what could be good, what could be bad, knowing that in the end, nobody really knows. So it's not about oversimplifying the Rubino like to create FOMO or just to invite people to do without them to understand.
So on my side of the world, right, games are driving most of the innovation. And just one second, Mateo. So we are doing so DeFi, decentralized finance, is a bit gamified already. So liquidity mining, yield farming. So we have the word called ape. So a lot of innovation, similar to how it came through in the early days of the internet, is coming through games. People in the 95s, 90s were writing Pac-Man and whatnot, and that drove a lot of innovation. On the internet, we are seeing the same thing in crypto and decentralized finance now with P2E gaming, which is play to earn gaming, where people can essentially play games all day and still make a living, and people who get better at games get paid by people who are less good at games. So gamification is at the heart of innovation in my world.
Yeah, it's actually this Axie Infinity is one example.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
which is going through the roof, or as others would say, to the moon. And another big development this year, wasn't it? GameStop, actually, see there again, it's just a word, but it comes. Actually, I think GameStop development also reaches out into the game environment. The whole development there, because the channels or the communication channels those people organized on are normally used by gamers and players. This difference of gamification, I fully get it, Paolo. The difference of gamification and real games, it's a difference. I always translate it to taking to flight simulation and taking a real flight, or really flying a plane. And a game gives you the wonderful opportunity to have this kind of flight simulation, and you're not living in the danger that actually your plane would crash and you're dead. This is the major difference to this. And it's not getting better by having a plane that has a gamified cockpit. A gamified cockpit does not prevent you of crashing. And I think we have to have that in mind when we speak about the demarcation line. But actually, I really love that what you say. We've been so massively influenced by the game industry. Banks, financial services do refuse totally to adopt that because they think games are stupid. Gamers are white-skinned, red eyes, desocialized people sitting in the cellar somewhere, smelling strongly because they hadn't had a shower for 2 weeks. All this kind of prejudices.
Shower. Right.
Okay, guys, sorry, I have to stop the three old guys talking about games, and let's make the two young ladies talk about serious stuff, right? It's a great. I think it's a great shift. Nina, how about some impact, new form of credits? I'm teasing you with Bloom a little bit, but what your adventure has inspired about new topics we could talk, or new or like adjacent topic we could talk about?
Well, I will pick up from where my wonderful colleagues were dropping off about gamification, because actually it does bleed into other parts of fintech. And we're seeing that because we want people to engage with their financial services. I'm sure MJ has a lot to say about embedded finance and where, it is actually quite hard. We've seen Google pull out from launching Plex, and a lot of others are kind of shifting away from the whole tech fin scenario that we had imagined. And we're now looking at other ways to engage with people with financial services. And so, today I was really interested. There's a company called Juno, a sister co-founder pair. They're half German, half French, but launching in London. So truly children of the European Union, maybe not anymore. And they are doing a Duolingo for financial literacy for women specifically. And so they're trying to kind of add in some of those things that we think of as not being part of the financial world, and kind of almost, it's like Duolingo where you're doing classes, you're doing little quizzes as well, but you're also getting that masterclass quality of having an expert explain to you basic things about personal finance management, which I think Matthias kind of touched on briefly as what he's up to now. I think there's also a really exciting time now when we talk about financial inclusion. It's not just like, oh, financial inclusion is a problem over in the developing world, or sorry, that's not the right term, the emerging markets that, everyone kind of goes, oh, sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America is where financial inclusion needs to happen. When actually in the UK, there's over 1 million adults without a bank account. So, it's a problem here in the Western world where we live in breaking banks, Europe as well. And it's not just about, migrants who we are specifically targeting with Bloom, these migrants who make up the backbone of our societies, who stock our shelves, who are our cashiers and waiters and clean our offices. But it's also about women who are still underserved and experience a pay gap, or, LGBT plus communities across the continent who are really struggling to find the money to get a loan to do IVF or have a surrogate or adopt a child. And this is something that they want to do as society becomes more progressive and allows them to, have children and things like that. So I'm personally very excited about this affinity group banking, where we have more and more people kind of breaking out into having specific financial services that really fit their needs. And I mean, we're joking about gaming and it's being a thing for the boys to talk about, but, there are huge communities of gamers, many who are women, and by the way, who unfortunately do receive a lot of abuse, but, they have a very particular lifestyle. Is there a way that we can look at gamers, not just in the terms of gamifying financial services, but actually flip it over? Can we serve gamers better? Can we look at underwriting them in a better way? Is there cash flow from their streams? I don't know. There's a really interesting thing to look at. So that's what I'm personally very excited about.
Great. Nina, and taking mental notes. So one for Matthias, we need to have Zynga, to in the show. And Nina, there is this bank for musicians. Can someone? They've raised money recently, and is a bank for artists or musicians. I wonder if one of you know the one I'm talking about. I promise. I will get. It's a United States. It's a digital, fully licensed digital bank for artists and musicians.
Brilliant.
We're going to, and this affinity banking, by the way, is a great name, and I promise it will be the title of one of the shows. Over to Megan.
Yeah, I just saw, a lot to kind of build upon what Nina was saying, but I was just
Nerve. The bank we are talking about, Renata from the backstage, she just shoot me a message. The bank is called Nerve.
Yeah, I was just reading today that United Masters is partnering with Coinbase to pay music artists in crypto as well. And yeah, I've been doing a lot of work in the embedded finance space, and there's some, interesting, I think, thinking about the artist community in particular. There's a lot of, there's two, it's DICE, and I forget the name of the other, that have two startups that have come up through the Rise cohort, actually, that are platforms helping to ensure artists are, getting paid the royalties that they should be getting paid, helping them manage, booking venues and everything. And I think, there's nothing stopping these, new wave of digital platforms that are helping everyone from, small businesses, artists, creators, gamers, from accessing more contextualized, more relevant financial products and services. So, you think about the needs of an artist, for example, artist that's just starting out, a lot of the times artists are very underpaid, sometimes working for free. So, they want to buy some new musical equipment. How do they access that capital? Well, if the platform that's, helping them book different tours and venues and everything is providing embedded lending, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. Then, when artists start traveling overseas, who's going to offer them, travel insurance? Perhaps, we start to see new types of insurance coming out with, the whole concept of embedded insurance. So insurances for artists to future-proof them against, cancel gigs in the next few years as we kind of experience what happens with COVID. And I think, I'm really excited about, this concept of affinity banking or niche banking. And I think, what we've seen is the rise of some neobanks like Daylight in the States, also Tomorrow in Germany, that are, creating these glorified digital current accounts and services to fit the needs of a very niche customer segment. And I think the next logical step is for, some of these very innovative kind of digital platforms to then take on embedded finance. And, we start to see companies like Deal and Gusto, these platforms that are focused on, providing digital HR platforms. Deal, which is focusing on just companies that have a remote workforce, which is something that, is going to really take off as a result of COVID, and, embedding different financial experiences and products. So, cards, digital wallets and everything. So, for me, I think we could have a whole series unpicking this and looking at, the different markets where embedded finance can really make a difference in the lives of consumers.
Good. Over to Paolo. Paolo, what about the new kind of like mass affluent tools, in the asset management space. So we didn't touch it a lot this year. We did more like the credit part, like the AI stuff and something. But what else is in the horizon in your opinion? And what else in general you think we should talk about?
Well, the shift of bank revenues worldwide, in particular in the Western world, Europe and North America, is towards wealth management because of the complex macroeconomic conditions. Wealth management means dumbing down, if you like, simplifying the engagement mechanism of the family office or the private banking to target the affluent segment of the clientele. And this has been going on. We see clear examples like Goldman Sachs, for example, which is trying to put together Marcos with United Capital. There was a network of financial planners and advisors in order to have digital engagement, but also an hybrid capability, if you like, to engage with individuals to provide them value. I guess that the difficulty that we are seeing here, because there is a difficulty as the industry changes with less speed than in other sectors, is that you still need to go through a cultural transformation on the way the human component has to relate with technology and with the client. That takes a bit more time. And this is the space for technology to support the individuals, so the employees, in terms of creating new conversations with clients. Now, ultimately, I also think and see from a worldwide perspective that the advent of platformication of banking will also tackle the issues of profitability and transformation of the wealth management for the affluent, because we will see the rise of advisory platforms, so digital solutions that enable individual advisors that operate as entrepreneurs, is some sort of the gig economy, be independent or independent advisors, to be capable of sourcing technology to create and leverage the conversations. So I guess that some of the institutions are learning that they will become more and more technology companies that will enable a network of advisors to have a variety of conversations out there to target the affluent opportunities. There's a huge amount of money there that has to change hands in the coming years. And this is where I guess fintech will have the biggest impact in the transformation of the wealth management space, but it requires a change of the business model from a linear distribution of products. So it's my brand, it's my funds, I put it out there, into the creation of advisory platforms that enable individuals to be more autonomous and independent to create conversations with clients.
Ajit, in the different boxes, there is one that is called breaking chains. Which is like the breaking payments, but for the whole crypto and DeFi world. We're actually talking with my friend Mircea, who is the CEO of a coin firm. He's really keen to be one of the backers for this show. And I do believe that, especially with the explosion of DeFi, having, say, a monthly show that talks about the space, whether it is a special or whether it is, sometimes in a regular sort of frame and some others as a special, would be a good idea, don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is quite a bit of interest. If you saw a recent report, so Europe has been powering quite a bit of the growth of DeFi, right? So I think there was a Chainalysis report where they said Europe is kind of, creating or driving 30% of the transaction volume globally in DeFi. There's also quite a lot going on around NFTs, non-fungible tokens, play to earn gaming. I've seen a lot of quality startups come through from Europe. There is also, we started the DeFi Alliance European chapter that I'm on the board of, and we're seeing a lot of quality talent, especially if from Eastern Europe now, and so there is definitely a lot to talk about. And this is also becoming, crypto is no longer a fringe. I think we're becoming a bit of a strategic component of the agenda in the banking and fintech boardrooms. We've seen Stripe, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, you name it, come into crypto. So the there's just a tremendous amount of investment and excitement and actually innovation in this space. What's really going on is, that with fintech for a long time, we changed the UX of the financial services completely. Now with crypto and blockchain and some of the other technology, we're starting to rewrite the back end of, financial infrastructure. And I think that's, it's still early days, but it's a pretty powerful movement. And it totally makes sense to, bring a lot of that insight to the crypto and fintech communities and bring them together.
One last one, and I'll do it together with Nina because she just reminded me that there is another topic that we are missing. I had an incredible conversation with the CEO and founder of Wahid, and which is like a neobank in the UK. About ethical investing, ethical investing and ethical insurance, and everyone is confusing it with Islamic finance, but it's so much bigger than Islamic finance is. In the case of insurance, for example, he was saying, why couldn't we imagine an insurance where, there is indeed a fee for the insurance, but the fees that are not redistributed in damage claims are redistributed to the insured people. So it's a whole different way of thinking of financial services, which I believe it would be, it should have some space. And I've been invited to talk digitally because I will be in Brazil, in Bratislava, into a fintech and climate conference at the end of October. And I believe, Nina, that was something that, you rightly reminded me it would be good to have in the agenda, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm personally looking forward to the COP26 summit in Glasgow next month. And I think climate has increasingly become a priority. I think probably Paulo, Matias, and actually Ajit as well in crypto would agree. Megan, I know that you have had your brush-ins with this in fintech, but everything from, consumer fintech, where you see cards like the tree card, where they will offset or they'll plant a tree for every transaction you make, or Klarna recently integrated Economy, which I believe they're Nordic, no? And they tell you what your carbon offset is, but all the way up to trade finance. And even, in the crypto world, people are starting to look at how can we make this all more sustainable from a climate perspective. I had the opportunity to speak to a woman who is working with the UN to try and get stock exchanges to start reporting their climate impact as part of annual reports, because they really feel that we need to make a much more systemic change. And, we've seen what was that? They're like that, what do they call it? Activist hedge fund, engine number 9, is it? Who recently took over the ExxonMobil board and basically said, you don't care about climate and you need to. And so they, kind of staged a bit of a coup of the board as an activist hedge fund that cares about the future of climate. So MJ, I know that you have something you wanted to add, but it's just something I'm looking forward to exploring more in the next few episodes.
Yeah, I think all of those are fantastic examples. And I think Shopify, like one of the most successful kind of innovative tech companies out there with their Shopify Pay. There's a lot of exciting things about Shopify Pay, but when you use Shopify Pay, there's, a green component where you're ensured that, the delivery is done in the most green, sustainable way. I think if Shopify is already starting to get into this space, then it's a matter of time before other tech companies start to think about it seriously. And I think, with rising energy costs and, people even younger than us, Nina, are, really putting, climate on the radar. And I think, I think about some use cases of, not like how you can tie in personal finance management with, being green. And I think about, like 22, 23, 24-year-olds who, need to start thinking about, can I buy a house? And, thinking about aspects of how they would want to make that house sustainable. So I know, for example, ABN AMRO offers, dedicated mortgages for kind of green and sustainable homes. But I think if we think about, the new types of financial experiences and services for, the super young folks, you absolutely have to think about how their approach to sustainability and climate change impacts like their purchasing behavior, their buying behavior, how they plan for different things, how they shop online. So I think it's definitely an inevitable topic and consideration that we all have to have going forward.
Megan, one punk is worth 2 houses right now. So that's what the young people are buying.
Well, thank you, Renata, for also pointing out it's not engine number 9 on the New York Transit line. It's engine number 1, the activist hedge fund. So obviously I've got old school rap in my head, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, guys, I think that, as expected, it was a great discussion. I loved it because it's informal. We did not prepare anything, guys, for sake of the auditors. But you could see that we could totally make this conversation flow for much more than this 15 minutes. So, guys, thank you so much. I want to thank you as if you were guests, but we are all guests and hosts today. And I look forward for the next 100 show, guys.
Absolutely. All right.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
When are we launching the BB token? I mean, shouldn't we have a DAO and launch the BB podcast token?
You can do that.
With this crazy idea of the last 10 seconds of Ajit, I think we can call it. And let's say 1, 2, 3 is a wrap. 1, 2, 3. It's a wrap.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.